Well, hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. Uh, we're getting kind of towards that end of the season. We're starting to see, some guys showing some season championships, and of course the IMCA national points. I think still have another week to go, so that's exciting. And just winding down, getting ready for 2026, and just working on stuff. How about you, Chad?
Yeah, we've had a couple weeks off there after the Super Nationals to rest up and heal up, and now we're getting ready to go back on the road for a couple weeks. So got Deer Creek this weekend for the jamboree, and then we got the boys decided to go to Lakes or Wheatland for the USRA Nationals again in 2 weeks. So we'll be there, and then we got the big asphalt race here next week. So busy couple weeks with events, and we're excited again to get back on the road and see the people and test the product.
You bet. Well, that sounds pretty good. So, what are we finding out with the new tire machine?
The tire machine's been fun. We've been smashing lots of tires, trying to figure out, mainly just trying to beat the machine up and make sure that I'm happy with the componentry and the how the software functions, and getting it to do what I want it to do. And I'm pretty particular, and it's got to be right before I'll let them go out the door. So we're working on the first batch of them, and we're pretty close to shipping the first ones out of the door. So we're pretty excited about that. Pretty happy with it so far. We got pages on there where you can take your sets of tires and match your sets of tires. So you can match your stagger, your circumference, and your tire load, which is your basically the spring rate of the tires. So and then you can store sets of tires. So and you can mismatch, and then you can come back after one night of run and run them again and see how much they've softened over time. So this has opened up a whole new can of worms, a whole new bunch of information that you can analyze and take data with. And the biggest thing we're trying to prove is that you can balance your car also with tires. And if you get a tire that's off by 100 pounds from the tire truck, most of the time you don't want to compensate with air. If you had a bunch of tires, then you could match load ratings on the right sides is probably more critical. So it's been exciting to see the changes in the tire and what they do on night one, night two, night three, and then also what they're doing dynamically in the middle of the corner. So yeah, we're learning a lot. We're just trying to build a good machine that people can use, and we're going to sell them to tire dealers too, the way it looks. Then guys are going to be able to go to some of the tire dealers and pick out tires they'll have the circumference rate on it then, and they'll have the load on there. So just, there's such a small advantage. It's so hard to find an edge in the sport, and when you get your car perfect and balanced, and then you throw a set of tires on that either the right front or right rear is off by a marginal amount, and it drastically changes the car, and then you chase that problem with that tire, and then you put the next set of tires on and they're balanced, and then you've already chased the wrong way. So you often wonder why this car doesn't repeat, right? That's what we look at the asphalt, like the track never changes. You have a temperature variance. The cars should handle the same every week. Well, when your tires are fading, you don't really know what you got. So it's a lot of testing, and definitely something that I think will be a useful asset for a lot of teams.
Sounds pretty cool. So, I see on Facebook you're going back to PRI.
Yep, we're burying the hatchet, and the boys Colby is in charge, and I let him lead. Trying to let him lead the marketing department, and he sat down in the meeting last week. We talked about it for a while, and what happened in 2020 with the COVID was kind of just it was COVID, right? It was a dumb sickness that got a lot of us sick and ruined the world for a little while. And So we're going back. We've been away for 5 years. They're excited to have us back. So we got a lot of product, a lot of new product, that we haven't shown a lot of our distributors and dealers, and we're looking forward to getting back there. And maybe with our return, we'll get some Circle Track, the group of Circle Track guys back and stronger than ever. So hopefully, some of the other companies that have been away, maybe you'll see us go back, and then they'll get interested to go back. And there's a handful of companies that haven't went since 2020. So I think it's has value, and Colby has talked me back into it. So we're excited. We got big things. The tire machine, and we're building the billet pit bike, which is an electric little pit bike that's going to be pretty awesome. That's pretty wild. We're doing that with the bike company with Wyatt Bikes. So we got a lot of new things that we're working on. We're super excited about. Them are two really big projects that have basically consumed everything we've been doing here for the last month and a half, 2 months. So yeah, trade shows. We're definitely back on board there. So we're looking forward to it.
And now I see the trade show that you put on in Rochester is the second week in March now.
Yep, March 14th. So we won't be the same weekend as the basketball, which should help us as far as parking. So we're excited about that. It's 1 week later than we were, but everything else should be going strong. We got people signing up, so I think they're planning on starting to release the companies that are signing up and start promoting that. So hopefully we can get as many or more than we had last year. We already got a new one. Winter's rear ends is coming. That's pretty big. I mean, that's one of the biggest names in the rear end industry. So we're excited to have them coming in 2026 to Rochester. So hopefully we just get the more big companies we get. It's just like PRI. It's a little regional PRI is what we're shooting for. So I think when you draw a circle around the Rochester area, we got lots of racers, and we were looking at moving it to Des Moines, and we thought about it too late and just couldn't pull it off. So we're in Rochester. We need the Des Moines and the northern Missouri guys to come to Rochester, and I think we'll have a show worthy of driving 5 or 6 hours for. So obviously not PRI level, and that's not what we're shooting for. We don't have the capacity for that, but. So we're working hard on that. We'll have PRI. We'll have that. Billy will be going to Syracuse to do that show in New York, Syracuse, New York, with Joel. And then we'll have the Springfield, Illinois show with the UMP banquet in January. So we're trying to focus more on the trade shows and build them back, build them better than they were before. And we're excited to get the dust off these carts and use them again here.
Awesome. Well, and we've got all of our tools are scheduled, and all the information is online at racetechinfo.com. So that's coming up, and so I'm just about ready to start working on that stuff. To answer the first question, Dave, I don't actually have an update on that new Rowood right front brake pad. I actually screwed up and didn't talk to Spike about that at the Super Nationals. I need to actually contact him and see where that project is at.
I got an idea. We should have Spike on.
Yeah. Yep, that'd be good. Rusty wants to discuss pull bar heights and angles, do's and don'ts, and what do you think is best? Well, of course, I kind of lean towards what the chassis builders are doing, and as far as angles, I still like that 15-degree angle, 28-inch bar seems to work pretty decent, 28 to 30. I've not had great success with the longer bars. I think they maybe delay the action a little too much. Plus the fact I think they pull too much off the right front and cause the car to shear the right front sometimes, you're right in the center of the corner when you get back on the throttle. The biggest thing is height wise, we're still, you know, what's the rule of thumb? About 11 inches above the center of the housing, somewhere
Yeah,
10 and a
11.
half to 11.
Yeah.
And like I said, angle wise, we stay pretty close to that 15 degrees. We've tried more angle. Uh, it seems like more angle gets you quicker traction, but doesn't last as long. Less angle is kind of the opposite way. If you're on a momentum place, a little less angle might be good because you got a lot of straightaway speed with less angle. But it'd have to be a momentum racetrack, in my opinion, in a larger, like a 3/8 high bank, like a Deer Creek type racetrack, something that's pretty fast. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. The height, the lower you get it, the more force it takes to control the motion, the more rate the pull bar has to have. So when you move it closer to the rear end, it's going to travel farther. When you move it farther up, it's going to travel less. Um, I would say that angle range is pretty good. If you go to a shorter track, you maybe give it 2 degrees more. If you go to a bigger track, like you said, a momentum racetrack that's got long straightaways and you need to carry the traction all the way down the straightaway, then you're going to want to flatten that guy out. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the deal, I think.
Yeah, like a Knoxville type racetrack, you definitely would want a little flatter. Jacob, how stiff is too stiff for the right rear on an IMCA stock car? And once you get up there in rate, would you go to the 11-inch instead of the 13? Um, I hesitate about the 11-inch because once again, we got to talk about spring table. The problem with the 11-inch, I think the spring table's too much split to the point where it can roll quickly to the right rear and lay there a little longer. Spring rate wise, the most stuff that we have tried is a 275. Now, the other thought, and we've got a lot of guys that some guys have went back to, 250 seems to be the go-to standard, and kind of depends on the racer and how he likes to race it. Some guys have went to the 225, but like an out of the box when we sell a stock car, that's the go-to spring we put in the right rear is a 250. Seems like if you get too stiff, then it loads the tire too much, and it doesn't get the chassis roll that you need to get, to keep the car on the right side, like I think it should. Um, let's see, Jacob. That's the same uh, on a stop and go racetrack. Um, it kind of depends on the banking. I still not. I'd rather go to a 12-inch spring if you feel that your spring table is needs some help getting the car rolling the right rear. But even there's times where we tried a 12-inch this year and it just seemed like it was, I don't know. I think the spring table was too quick to react. Um, but that's just my opinion. I mean, we could have had other things that were causing the problem, and that's what we thought it was, so we changed it. Stop and go racetracks. The stiffer right rear on a stop and go racetrack's probably going to be a little better corner entry. The softer, like the 225 or the 250, is going to be a little better on corner exit. So the stiffer you go, it's going to be tighter on entry and and freer on exit. Rusty, in front or behind center, the distance. It kind of depends on what you're getting for pull bar movement. Most of the majority of the cars that I see now, and Chad probably sees a lot more than I do, but pretty much center is about where most everybody seems to be at.
Yeah, I'd say center or
Slightly behind.
yeah. I've had more guys in front now than behind, but
Really?
um, something to do with how it decells if you get it too far behind. So I wouldn't go more than 2 inches either way. There's no reason probably to go 4 inches in front unless you're a UMP car with like 2.5 inches of movement. When you're traveling 2.5 inches, then you got to be in front uh, so you don't cam the pull bar over.
Right.
But if we're running the other tires, the hard tire pull bars with the short distance, then we're not traveling the bar as much, so we cheat it back a little bit then. So, but I'd stay within 2 inches of center line.
I would agree with that. Jamie, after a season of racing, what is your opinion on the new Speedway frame stock cars? Well, we haven't, I can't actually offer an opinion on that because I haven't, uh, there's, well, the opinion that I can offer is I believe the car has to be a little different, built a little different than with the standard OEM frame. Um, Talking to Mark Elliott from Harris and Terminator, that's kind of what they found, that the car needed to be built with a little less rigidity because they say the frame adds a little to that. But once again, I mean, I've seen John Oliver Jr. has got 20 wins on a B&B new frame, the Speedway frame. So it's just a lot to do with setup. And like I said, I think um, the builder needs to, I think there needs to be a little bit more work involved in that part of it. The cars we're building, we're still using the OEM frame. Um, it's probably a mistake on our part because eventually we'll have to go to that Speedway frame, but I'll worry about that when the time comes.
Maybe we should build a stock car twist rig.
Yeah. Well, when I was talking to Steve Arpin and he was kind of talking about that deal that they have down there, that really intrigued me. That intrigued me almost as much as the tire machine did.
Yeah.
It's just another, back in the day, and this, trust me, that's one advantage of talking to me. I have a lot of back in the day stories, but we changed. I think it was '97. We changed the nose bar design on the left front of our modified. The thing that we found out is we actually put a bend in it without, instead of having a straight bar going forward, because when the cars would get crashed, it tried to shove that steering wheel and everything back to the driver. So we put a bend in it without a support bar. Well, all of a sudden, those cars needed to have a real stiff left front spring. So we took it down to Wayne Larson's collision specialist and put a brand new frame on his machine and started testing, just, putting pressure and stuff. And it was unbelievable when we pushed up on that left front, how much that left front would move. And then we put a brace bar in there, changed the whole car. I mean, it was a totally different race car. So, that stuff has a lot to do with a lot of things. It's amazing. Richie, on a mod light, I went to a J bar from a straight bar. Now the car's picking up the left front pretty high. Would you take angle out on the frame side and help the left front come back down? I'd probably take angle out, but I mean, if it's lifting the left front, it's sticking the right rear hard. So you might want to go up on the pinion rather than go down on the frame and try it running it a little bit higher, just to see what you think. And you might have to run it a little flatter. I mean, I don't know how much angle you have in it, but um, what's your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, when you move the roll center over there, you're going to put more pressure on the right rear spring. So naturally, you're overpowering the spring. So it would either be flatten the bar or increase spring rate. You don't want to get to the point where you have to put too much spring rate in that the car is breaking loose because it's overrated. So I mean that kind of works hand in hand with that mechanical motion the Panair bar does, and it's when you put that you have a short left side bar and it's not influencing the right rear as hard as that J bar is because it's longer and moves closer to the right rear tires. So might be a balancing act between less angle and a little bit more right rear spring.
Paul's got a question. He says, has either one of you heard if IMCA is eliminating the brake floater or changing the pull bar to a solid bar on A mods? I highly doubt that. I don't see that happening either way. Um, I don't completely see a real need. I,
Yeah,
we need to make a change there.
there was a lot of talk about the underside brake floater, obviously, making a rule for it must be on top. And I haven't talked to Dave. I wanted to talk to him at Super Nationals about a few things, but that's the wrong time to talk to Dave. So I'll put that on my list of things to call Dave about too, because I got a couple other things I want to get approved, and I'll maybe I'll see if that's a thing or not, or maybe he's watching tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard one way or the other. Like I said, I highly doubt that they would eliminate the brake floater. They might regulate the brake floater. Changing the pull bar to a solid pull bar, that I would see no benefit to that.
Sounds like Mike Kennedy wants a frame machine.
Mike Kennedy wants a front end machine. Oh well, what the heck?
He wants a
Um,
twist rig for stock car.
yeah, Mike's definitely a great car owner. Sometimes I think he has too much time.
If
Yeah,
you got
he
a if you got
definitely.
a if you got a load stick, you basically have a twist rig. You just got to figure out how to tie the car down. That's what Longhorn
Right.
uses. We built them their twist rig, basically the stick that's on there. So
Awesome. Well, like I
but don't
said, I mean, there's just so much that goes on there. I mean, it's just unbelievable, and it's just like you know, some cars get worse with age, some cars get better with age, um, and so I mean, there's a lot to do with that whole tubing and construction thing, and everybody's got an opinion, and I appreciate all the opinions because certain track conditions, all those opinions win races. All kinds of different styles of cars are pretty bad awesome in certain, in some track conditions are better than others, depending on what the car is. Yeah, you're right, Mike. We definitely only get one time to do it right, and once is enough. Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely. Well, like I said, progress on our new stock cars. um, going together well. Everything's coming out really good. I've been real impressed. Troy and all the guys there at BHA have done an awesome job, um, putting that thing together. And let's just hope it's as fast as it looks like it should be. So that's what we'll find out. Hopefully
Are
here
you
in a
trying to
couple of weeks.
are you going to
What do
try
you
and run
think?
it this year?
Yeah, plan on testing it October 13th and then running it that following weekend at Makokada. And
Gotcha.
then if Marshalltown gets that late October date in, we'll plan to run it there. Dave, USRA Modified is aftermarket lower A-arms faster than stock style. Um, I don't think they're any faster. The advantage of an aftermarket lower A-frame is you can build different links if your rules allow it. So that's where, like UMP, you can run a +1 lower right front lower A-frame and stick the right front out further and not have to have so much wheel offset. You can just actually do it, with A-frame construction. So, and Chad, I mean, you would know more about that than I do, but as far as performance advantage, I don't.
Yeah, the fabricated ones that we make are a little stronger than the stock ones, just
Right.
because them to last longer. And the open mods that are bump stopping, the control arm has to be stronger, like on a USRA UMP style car. When you bump stop the suspension, that's obviously transfers through the lower control arm, which transfers to the tires. So, um, yeah, I mean, the lower control arm that we build is basically Nick Hoffman designed it, and we took over the production of it, and it's been pretty good. Geometrically, there's nothing different from a stock lower to our lower, other than frame clearance. So the advantage to running a fabricated lower, if you can, is that you'll get extra travel. And I think we just measured it because we're working on a project. And I think it was 1.25 inches more travel with
Yeah,
the
I was thinking
fabricated.
of it. I knew it was right at an inch or a little bit more than an inch.
Pretty sure it was 1.25 inches with the fabricated. So when you're talking about getting your car down where you want to get it to run around the track and the aero platform and trying to get the tail up so you get the spoiler in here, obviously then there's an advantage with that fabricated lower because you're going to be able to get the travel, to get the car down, to get the attitude, to get, to make it handle better. So, um, you know, they will make you faster then if you go from that aspect. So that was a really long yes.
Uh, Jig, any advantages to twist axles? Yes, I believe there is a big advantage to those axles. We sell a lot of them, um, and it's kind of like, I mean, they're definitely more expensive, but you're also getting more of a precise piece. Standard axles, depending on where you get them, can actually rate different. And actually, Chad was telling me about this, so I'll let you tell these guys about that because you know more about it than I do. You tested it.
Yeah, I mean, axles are spring. It's part of your traction, and that's we preach it in the school. We preach it on here. You when you build a brand new car, it's the best the first night out, and from there it's fatiguing. And axles are often overlooked. And if you can run the strange, the twist axles or whatever, and tune with those, it's huge. But you're gonna wanna get a roller like what we sell, and make sure you scribe a line or paint a line or something on there, so you can see the twist of that axle and know that it's fatiguing and it's time to get a new one. That's one of the most overlooked pieces of a race car is the axles. I mean, they're fatiguing from day one. That's what's driving the tires. So definitely an advantage. Definitely something you're going to keep a life on, and monitoring the twist and spending the money on new ones is essential for good performance.
Yeah, that drawing that line on there, that's actually something we do on every new one before we even send it to the customer. That way we just know and that it's done and because like you said, it's a big deal. I mean, it changes a lot of things and it's just like everything. They do wear out. I mean, just think of what that axle goes through. Dylan, on a metric street stock with adjustable upper rear trailing arms, should they be the same length? I would agree with that. They definitely need to be the same length. That suspension kind of has a tendency to be a little bit have its share of binds the way it is. And if you started altering the lengths, I think you would create more binds and it wouldn't, it just wouldn't work as smoothly. GM, when they designed that deal, they did a great job and it works very well. But that's why those uppers, especially the right upper, wears the bushings out so much because they just go through a lot of load. Jay, I've noticed recently one or two car builders will not powder coat their frames. They thought is the heat changes the integrity of the metal. What's your thoughts and Chad's opinion on that? Um, Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I mean there's been a lot of discussion about that. There are a couple chassis builders on the asphalt side that actually heat treat the car to make it anneal and relax. So there's two ways to look at that. When you heat treat the frame, it's actually a lot longer process than the powder coat process. So obviously you're softening that metal and it's gonna relax to some point. Whether that's bad or good, obviously the powder coating is expensive, but I don't know. I don't have any data to prove that it's different. I know that the asphalt cars that are heat treated are very, very good. They are very consistent. If you take a car that's been welded and it's stressed and it's not relieved through the powder coat process, I could see that car changing throughout its life as far as, as that car's going in the corner and it's getting flexed and maneuvered and whatever. I think that would probably change more through its life than a car that's been powder coated or heat treated or annealed. So, yeah, definitely an interesting topic. A lot of people don't even think about it, but one of the most respected asphalt teams in the world is doing it. So I wouldn't be worried about it.
I'm a firm believer. I like the idea of the powder coat part of it just because it does, I think, relax that car a little bit. And the thing that you will find, and this is one of the things that we found in when we were manufacturing, we had two guys welding up chassis. One guy would do it in a specific order, and then the other guy did it in a little different order, and we would actually have two different cars where it seemed like because when you unpin them, you can tell there's a little tension on that frame, and the powder coating seemed to help that, but it wasn't too long till we just made sure both welders welded everything identically in the same order so that when the car was built, it stressed in the same way that it was done. That's another thing people don't think about. But I mean, if you change how the car's put together, the cars are going to be a little different. That's one of those deals where some guys will get a new car and there's lights out and they wreck it and they get another new car and the new car is not the same. Well, I mean, there's all those kind of factors that can weigh into it.
Yeah, we have weld processes for brake brackets, the lower control arms. If you don't do them the same every time, you're not going to get the same product out of that jig.
Aaron, any tips on how to get faster to beat one more car? LOL. Thanks, you guys, for all you're doing. Well, Aaron, keep working on it, man. Just put your eyes or your nose to the grindstone and just Maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. That is the key to winning races. And if you can out maintenance somebody, or your car is where it's got to be, I mean, it's such a huge deal. Mike says, I wonder why the axle manufacturers don't scribe a line on them. Well, I mean, it's just a different process, and their manufacturing part of it. We can do it because we only, we might ship out 5 axles or 6 axles a week or something like that. So it's not a big deal for us to do that. Where if you're shipping out 100 or 200, I can see where that would be a stretch. James, I run a 3 link Power B mod style. It's a 22 GRT by CRC, and the chassis builder is saying to run 110 to 125 pounds of left rear bite. But everyone else is saying that's way too much. Thanks for your help. Well, that I don't like running that much bite. The more bite you put in the car, the freer the car is going to be getting into the corner. So even though you're putting bite in that left rear to try to get the car to traction up coming off the corner, if you lose any speed in phase two, it doesn't matter how much traction you have because you lost tenths of a second in the middle of the corner. Um, I still like that 60 to 80 pounds. That's kind of, now granted, if we've got a car that has to be a little bit heavier left side weight because the driver's a little beefier than some, um, then you're kind of stuck with what you have there. But I've not had great luck with that much bite. It seems like every time I've ever went over 100 pounds, it just seems like the car was too free getting into the corner. Dylan, also, what should preload be on the rear spring at ride height with the driver in the car? I'm running a 16-inch 150 and a 13-inch 225, having a loose condition coming off the corner on dry slick. Um, we preload. You know, we actually preload that left rear probably an inch to an inch and a half, depending on what it is. But that would be with a lighter spring. We would be talking 100 pound, 125 pound. If it's an A mod, I mean, we've got guys running 80 pound springs. 150 probably is a little bit stiff for a modified. Sport mod with a heavier driver, depending on what the weight of the driver is, you might have to have a little stiffer left rear spring. But I would consider um, maybe trying a little softer spring with a little more load to get the car to react quicker. What's your thoughts, Chad?
I was exactly what you said. I was going to soften the left rear to 125, yeah, or 100.
Well, like I said, the season's kind of starting to wind down some places, but now we've got all these specials. And I don't know, in my opinion, I kind of like the specials events a whole lot better than sometimes the weekly stuff because you get a variety of cars, you get more competition, um, and there's so many specials. Like I said, Marshalltown, I think Marshalltown's specials the 24th and 25th of October. Now, I do live here in Iowa, and I have seen snow before Halloween. So we'll see how that goes. It might be a little chilly, like coveralls and parkas. Dylan says this is on a 2,800 pound metric stock frame chassis. Well, you probably need that 150 then on that 2,800 pound car. Yeah, I'd still try a 125 though if you have one. I think and put a little preload in there. It might be something to consider. Um, like I said, I know the guys that are running 2,900 pound streets or stock cars. There's guys that are running 125s, and I've heard that seems to, with a little more load, seems to help the car get a little bit more traction. Uh, Michael, we are continually having to put rounds in the right front spring at the racetrack to keep the right front frame out of the track. We went up 25 pounds earlier in the year and it got a little better. We are considering either going another 25 pounds across the nose or adding a little right front anti dive or maybe a little pro dive to the left front. What's your thoughts? We are currently neutral on our upper A frames, and it's a beat. By the way, it's an IMCA modified. Um, yeah, you need more anti-dive in that right front. Now, keep in mind, anti-dive really is only effective if you're on the brakes. So the guys that do not use a brake pedal, um, probably not going to see a big advantage, but we definitely run more than that. You know, our cars are at 4 degrees, and I know there's some stuff out there that's at 6 degrees on the right front. Um, Left front's pretty limited. I think we're at a degree and a half or something on the left front, but definitely try that. That definitely has helped us when we have increased the anti-dive from that car slamming down on that right front. I would hesitate to go stiffer because what's going to happen when you go stiffer on spring, it's really not going to fix the problem, but it's going to cause a problem where it's going to be easy to shear the tire. So then all of a sudden you're going to shear the right front tire because the car is just too stiff to get over there. Um, Rob, what's a general rule on changing toe? We usually run 3/8 of an inch out on our local quarter-mile racetrack. Should we run more or less on bigger tracks? Should we change anything for the slick in regards to toe? Well, keep in mind when the car goes through its motion and the right front's turned out 15 degrees or 10 degrees, whatever it is, it's going to gain some toe. I think your 3/8 out is pretty good. Um, I've went further than that on a real dry slick condition where I really wanted to make sure that, and I actually did it more to keep heat in the front tires, to keep scrub in the front tires. Now, granted, I think that cost us a little speed possibly, but when it's that dry slick and you're going that slow getting into the corner, a little speed's not an issue. So, I wouldn't go over a half an inch because, like I said, it's going to automatically, when the car's rolled over on the right front, it's going to toe out automatically a little bit anyway. Justin, for a stock car, do you recommend 11-inch or 13-inch with what top cup? Um, I probably at this point in time, I'm not a fan of 11-inch spring. I'm just sorry. It's just not. It's not something. I mean, I've tried it in a sport mod. I've tried it in, the only thing in an A mod, it doesn't matter because it's not has nothing to do with the length of the spring. But as far as a stock car, I would go with that 13-inch and use that drop cup that Chad makes, that big drop cup.
Yeah, I would say that there's the two springs definitely act different. So sometimes when you're trying to manipulate the spring table, the progression rate of the shorter spring just isn't the right feel for some people. So, that's kind of like the shorter spring when the helix gets tight, and it's kind of like a tight helix. So the closer the coils get together, the closer it gets to coil bind, it reacts different than a 13-inch is going to do. So you can take the same spring rate and have 4 different heights, and they're all going to be a little bit different acting.
Yeah, because like I said, I really thought that 12-inch spring was going to be the hot ticket, and we've tried it on a couple stock cars, and we've went back to that 13-inch spring. Um, Clay, does temperature cause a shock to not go all the way down when asked to push it down in tech? No, heat would have nothing to do with that. Um, if anything, a hot shock. Well, first of all, the shock's not going to be over 120 degrees. It's going to feel warm to your hand, but we've tested that stuff up to 200 degrees, and the oil doesn't fade. Jamie, Chad, with the WM304TC tall spring cup, where do you measure the spring table?
So it's a little bit hard to see in this, but on them style spring cups, it's where the tip of the screw jack is in the cup. So in the drop cups, it'd be wherever the base of that is. So you can see here that the spring height is in the play and where the tip of that screw jack is. Once you get to the top of the spring cup and you take that screw jack and put it on the top, that's as high as you can go because it's a fixed member. Once it's bolted above there, you can't manipulate it anymore. When the tip is down below there, then it's manipulated. So you measure from the ground at ride height up to where it's bolted to the spring cup.
A lot of good questions tonight. We still have 15 more minutes to go for any other questions. Um,
I'd like to back up to one and add a little bit more to, I don't remember his name now, but, James, the one that was talking about what everybody else is running. That goes back to the your own notebook thing, like we always talk about.
oh,
You
sure.
know, do what your butt's telling you to do, not what that other guy's talking about. There's so many variables in these cars when you look at springs and shocks and axles and trailing arms and trailing arm lengths and ballast location. I mean, just because driver B has 200 pounds of wedge doesn't mean driver A is going to have 200 pounds of wedge, right? So you have to focus on your own program and stay in your own notebook, stay with your chassis builder and tune accordingly. And just because that chassis builder says 110 pounds a bite, that's based off driver A. You're not driver A. You're yourself. So that's the most common thing that we see is people, adjusting for something that they're not listening to themselves. So once you listen to what your car is telling you to do and learn how to adjust for what you need to win races, things generally go better.
Um, Roger that. So the tall spring cup in the left rear is not great. No.
Well, the tall cup just has the taller lip. The drop of that is still I don't know. I don't have them all memorized off the top of my head. So you just got to measure that where the screw jack is compared to the right rear, and see what you need there. But the tall cup is just how much the inner cage comes down in that to keep the spring from coming loose. Back in the day when we were coming off the springs, we needed that super long inner so the
Right.
spring wouldn't fly out. Some days are over and we could just about eliminate. We hardly sell that cup anymore because we're pre-wound and we're onto that left rear soft spring so much that that cup is just about obsoleted. So you want to make sure that that inner ring isn't touching when you're in compression on that left rear also. Make sure you're not bottoming out there. But yeah, tip of the screw jack to the ground will tell you the spring table.
Michael says his wife got upset that he ordered parts for his race car on her birthday. Any advice on how to deal with an upset wife? I don't know if I would be the expert on upset wives because I've had three of them, but I can tell you one thing. My son-in-law just bought in fact, I convinced him that he needed to buy a new gun for hunting because he's the stuff that he's been using is just old junk, and he's going to hunt for another 20 years, and so a good shotgun would be a good investment. However, it is going to cost him new carpet in his basement too. So keep that in mind. Depending on how much money you spent on the parts, Rose is probably not going to be enough. Um, okay, let's see here. Zach, have you played with anti-dive in a stock car? Well, the stock mounts have a lot of anti-dive because, of course, keep in mind, Grandma's Oldsmobile, we want to make sure that the front end doesn't slam to the ground when she steps on the brakes. So we want to make sure it's got good ride control. And when you step on the brakes, it keeps the front of the car up. Have we played with that? Yes, we have. I think there's some things that can be gained. Uh, it's a front end. It's a circle track race car. There's always things to be gained on the front end. I mean that I know we talk about rear geometry and we talk about traction and we talk about all that stuff. But if you don't enter the corner good, and if the front end isn't working where it's supposed to in the middle of the corner, I don't care what all that other stuff does because it isn't going to matter. That was one of the things, and not to toot my own horn, but that back when we first started building IMCA modifieds in 1984, that was one of the things that we spent a lot of time with. And Jim Scales, who at that time owned AFCO Racing Products, and him and I worked on that front end and actually drew the whole front end out on paper, the size of the front end to get it, where it was right. And I think that was our advantage at the very beginning of our modified career. It was the cars just drove a little better. Um, when you take a few rounds out of the right rear coilover on an A mod, does that put left rear bite in the car? Yes. Anytime you take rounds out of the right rear, the right rear is going to get lighter, and in turn, the car's, I mean, some other spring is still going to have to hold it up, which would be that left rear, and it's going to take a load off the left front and out of the right rear, and add load to the right front and add load to the left rear. Joel, why are some guys going to 16-inch spring on the right rear of stock car? Did I miss the advantage of that point? Um, no idea, Joel. I would have no that I wouldn't understand the theory until somebody explained it to me because it would go against everything that we've talked about with spring table and all that stuff. Chris, Chad, thanks for the reminder of staying in your own notebook. Like Chad said, we talk about it at the schools. I mean, Joe beside you's got a razor, and the guy next to him's got a rage, and then there's a Vanderbilt next to him. Well, I mean, these things they have four wheels and four tires, but they're as different can be. And so, plus the drivers, no driver drives the same. So the whole notebook deal it's just so crucial. I hear it all the time. Well, so and so's doing this. Okay, are they winning races? Yeah. Well, then you might want to figure out what they're doing and update your notebook. but don't go changing stuff just because of hearsay. Blake, heat spring on the
Heavy.
left rear. What?
Read the next. Read the second one. Heavy spring.
Oh, heavy spring. Sorry, I didn't go down. Heavy spring on the left rear and light spring on the right rear. What's best way to get side bite when it's slick? What's your thoughts, Chad?
Well, not sure what we're talking about, but the heavy spring should be in the right rear.
That would be my opinion. Years and years and years ago, when we had 3,400 pound cars and they just got over because we had a soft tire, maybe that worked okay. But in today's world, soft left rear, stiffer right rear. The stiffer right rear, what that does is it forces the tire to load and loads the tire to get side bite on that tire. When you soften up the spring, now all of a sudden you're getting body roll, but you're not getting weight transfer to that tire. And if you don't stick that right rear tire, it's going to be free. And then, of course, if you run it free, then that tire is going to get warm. And then when it gets warm, it's going to fade. And I mean, it's just nothing about that equation ever seems to get better as the race goes on. Um, Dylan, what springs do you recommend on a 2,800 pound street stock with aftermarket lowers? I currently have an 800 left front and a 700 pound right front. Well, for that weighted car, um, I don't know. Sounds a little soft. Probably 900 and an 800 maybe would be a little better. But if you're getting if the front end's not moving too much, the softer spring gets the car over there. However, the softer the right front spring is on that type of suspension, um, is going to cost you a little bit of bite coming off the corner. Blake said on a stock car. Well, that's kind of what I was actually thinking. Ben, right rear spring on top of the rear end. Hang on a second. If I have load number I'm targeting, what would be the proper way to check with the load stick? Check with setup stick on the left rear and or at full droop. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Well, again, where did you get this number you're targeting? So we're gonna, assuming this is an A mod or a B mod. I guess I'm not 100% sure. I don't like using the load sticks on the rear of an A mod just because we have 4 link bearing cages. There's a lot of variables there that can change the rate, right, of the assembly. So you have to be careful with that. If you're not moving that stuff around, then you can build a pretty consistent notebook. But you do have to have a setup stick made for the opposite side so that you can have a setup stick in the left rear and then have a load stick in the right rear. If you're trying to pull a coilover number, a load number off, and put it on top, it's not going to be the same, just because of the ratio location of that spring. So be careful with that number how you're doing that. But the load stick will give you data as long as you're consistent with how you're doing that. And if you make a bar change, you're going to have to redo your numbers. But it'll give you some data and let you tune off that stick for sure.
Justin, what bird cages do you recommend on a USRA GRT AMOD? Um, Boy, Chad, you'd have to answer that one because I don't know what we use. I mean, I don't know part numbers.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to build a new car, I think I would probably put the heavy left rear on. and a standard right rear bearing cage, bearing both sides. I'd do the narrow combo probably on the left rear. You can do wides. I think. Are you guys putting wides on the left rear?
No, I think we went back to narrows. We
Back.
did have wides, but I think the new car that we're building for McBurney's got narrows.
So then a narrow combo heavy zero index left rear, and I'm not sure. I'm going to screw the number up if I say it, but if you go to the website or give us a call tomorrow, we can help you with that. But the narrow combo, heavy left rear, and then a bearing standard double shear right rear cage is what I would put on there.
Ben says both springs are on top.
Yeah. So use a setup stick the opposite side of the load stick, and just make sure that if you move an arm, double check that your numbers are consistent.
All right, sounds good. Great show tonight. A lot of great questions. I'm very pleased. Hopefully, we did an okay job answering your questions, and we'll see you guys again October 6th. And have a great weekend. Hope you're all going to go to some specials and get some more racing in before it gets super cold. Joel says, what do you recommend for zero indexing on that bird cage?
Yeah, it's a zero index cage. So if you buy the cage from us, it comes with a sheet. It explains the whole zero index process and how to properly do it.
All right. Well, have a great night, everybody. Thanks, Chad.
Oh, he said why? Yeah, why? I would get the zero index just because it's I think it's better to take the bind out of the suspension so you can have you know more angle and not be bar locked. So it gives you both options to do the zero index or standard. So it's just the best cage for the left rear right now.
All right. Well, have a good night, and we'll see, like I said, all you guys here in 2 weeks, and we'll see how Chad's asphalt race goes, and see if his employee Steve puts it on those guys, and get updates on all the other races going on, Deer Creek, and all that good stuff.
Right on.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. See you later.